and Joyojeet at Microsoft Research India, and Geetha Ramakrishna from Vision Empower. The work is on conceptual learning through accessible play, Project Torino and computational thinking for blind children in India. Just a brief word before we start on Vision Empower, which is a non-profit located in Bangalore, working to enhance STEM learning for children in schools for the blind in Bangalore. They do very good work, and I suggest people look into their website to see what they are doing whenever you have time. So back to computational thinking. It's been well recognized that computational thinking has to take the same place as reading, writing, and arithmetic in schools for the children, starting as early as possible, first grade onwards. So many countries around the world are introducing computational thinking in their curriculum. In India, we have ACM India sponsored effort, an admirable effort to create a complete computational thinking curriculum from grade 1 to 8. The location is cspathshala.org, a completely volunteer-driven effort with a lot of study material, teacher resources, etc., available all free of cost. And people are trying to translate this into many local languages in India. The key issue with this is, unfortunately, the entire approach is visual, so it is completely unsuitable for children who are blind. And given the fact that India is home to the largest population of blind in the world, and about 1.5 to 2 million of them are children, it's important that we make computational thinking accessible to the blind. And so our very, very long-term goal, this is a huge challenge, is to create an equivalent set of resources for the same curriculum for children who are blind or low vision. That's our long-term goal. Now, shifting gears a little bit, we look at play. Play cannot be defined, but you can describe it as any freely chosen, self-directed, intrinsically motivated activity with participants defined bounds of space and time. Every phrase is important. If you remove some of them, you'll end up with professional, really professional warfare like football or boxing or gambling on the other end. So every one of them is important to describe pure play. And play is profound for humans. We are humans because we play, and we play because we are humans. So much so that the Dutch philosopher Huizinga in the 40s thought Homo ludens was a better description for Homo sapiens. And inspired by Homo ludens, Bill Gaver started looking at designing for Homo ludens, which in turn inspired a work presented about 7 years ago at ICTD by my colleague Joyojeet and Padma. And we have been inspired by this background to create an entirely new methodology we call ludic design for accessibility. Technology accessibility solutions are built with a very strong functional lens, most often even paternalistic, where we say, hey, you have a problem, I can build a solution for you to do X or to go from A to B without assistance, etc. It's totally functionally driven, and which ignores the fact that people with disabilities are people first, and they also want to play. They want to have joy. They want to have social gathering with their family and friends. And so our philosophy is that we need to put play and playfulness central to all of our efforts with accessibility. And a brief summary is that ludic design approach is something which takes pure play, as described earlier, and creates a solution that when players play it for extended amounts of time, the intended benefit, the skill or the competence that you want to transfer, happens as a side effect of extended and joyful play. So I'm going to share a paper on ludic design for accessibility, which is supposed to appear this year as a chapter in a book, but it's available for us right now. So I'll share it at the end of the talk for the details. This effort today is about applying this methodology to take computational thinking for children in schools for the blind in Bangalore. And my colleague Gesu is going to take you through the rest of the work. Gesu, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Manohar. Hi, everyone. I'm Gesu, and I'm a research fellow at MSRI India Lab. So I'll be talking about our project of introducing computational thinking to blind children in India using ludic design for accessibility. As you can see on the screen, it's called Project Torino. We are using Project Torino in our project. It's a tangible programming environment designed at MSR Cambridge to introduce primary school children to basic concepts of computational thinking, regardless of their level of vision. It is designed for the integrated school system in UK, where blind and sighted children go to the same school. Last year, American publishing house started marketing Torino commercially in the with name Code Jumper. To give a brief idea about what Code Jumper, how it works. Next slide. Yeah. To give you a brief idea of how it works, it's a collection of pods which when connected together, they make a program which gives you an output in the form of audio. So each pod acts like a statement of the program with knobs on the pod controlling the parameters of that statement. For example, on the left, the picture on the left, you can see the blue pods, the pods with blue knobs. They are called play pods. So it's a basic pod, and it plays one sound clip at a time, which is equivalent to like running one statement of the program at a time. One of the knobs on the pod actually selects a specific clip out of the set of preloaded sound clips, and the second knob controls the speed of the playback. So the pods in the program, they need to be connected to the hub, which has 4 channels. So basically you can play 4 parallel programs at the same time. Code Jumper also comes up with the software, the picture on the right, as you can see, and the software lets you to upload your own custom sound clips to the software, and it also gives you a visual representation of the program that you have made with the pods, which is very similar to the MIT's Scratch programming environment. Code Jumper also comes with lesson plan, assessment sheets, worksheets, and the teacher's guide on how to teach computational thinking using Code Jumper. All of this based on the UK CT curriculum. Next slide. Yeah. So MSR Cambridge conducted a study in UK with 10 children using Code Jumper. Children worked in groups of 2 or 3 children along with the sighted facilitator. Children were of mixed visual abilities and of age group 7 to 12 years. So basically they were primary school children. Over a period of 2 months, based on their observation, notes, and conversation with children, researchers concluded that blind children learn all the concepts using Code Jumper similar to that of their sighted peers. Now, our project here is to see if we can use Code Jumper in schools for the blind in India with similar benefits while using our ludic design methodology. That is, you play with Code Jumper and you learn the concepts of computational thinking more like as a side effect of this playful experience. To give a little bit idea about the schools for the blind in India, there's a vast difference between the UK integrated school systems and the schools for the blind in India. For example, many of the teachers in the schools themselves are blind. You can find more detail about this in the paper. So we conducted our research in 3 such schools for the blind in all located in Bangalore city. 12, next slide. Total 12 children were part of our study. All of them were studying in grade 2 and belonged to age group of 6 to 12 years old, and they had different levels of vision impairment. We called our study sessions as play sessions. Play groups were formed, which consisted of basically 2 or 3 children playing in a group along with the sighted facilitator, and even the facilitators acted as players together with the children. Since there were like no designated time period or say like a schedule given for computational thinking in these schools, we schedule our play sessions during music period or play periods in these schools, like whichever was possible. The picture on the next slide. Yeah, this picture shows you how the play space looked like in one of the schools. So it's like a huge room. Once every week, we would go there and meet the children, would sit on the floor, on the carpet, and play with them with Torino. So like in the very first play session, facilitators showed children a very simple story or music that which they made on Torino just for the children to have an idea of what Torino does and like for them to start from there exploring. Soon by the end of like 2 play sessions, children divided the pods into their favorite pods and non-favorite pods, all based on if they made any sound. Later, they also figured out that the pods which did not make sound, like the loop pod, if and else pod and everything, they had a special purpose and they could make their, they started to use it in their own stories, etc. So all of this learning was led by exploration. Children also explored the possibilities with the content on Code Jumper. So slowly they started demanding stories and music in their native languages like Kannada, Tamil, Marathi, etc. in place of the default English content which was already available on CodeJumper and which we took to the schools first with. Some days they would ask us to bring a story they heard from their grandma. Some days they would ask us to bring story from YouTube with dialogues from their favorite action movies, and then they would like jumble it all together and make a story that would make sense. So yeah, there was a lot of demands that were made. So they also asked the facilitators if they could play the stories in their own voices, and they wanted to hear their own voice on CodeJumper. Well, so also like in the middle of the study, they would like randomly take breaks and like start running around in the place. So children really enjoyed their freedom to play or to not to play with us. In the next slide. So facilitators here acted as players and engaged in fun banter around the stories that were made on Torino by children. They kept notes during the play sessions and evaluated the learned concepts through like conversations and by giving simple tasks to the children. They also facilitators only like intervene when it was necessary. For example, in one scenario, two children in a group were arguing that they wanted only their story to be played on Torino or CodeJumper. And when they asked the facilitator to help them resolve this issue, the facilitator connected one story to the if channel and other story to the else channel of an if and else pod. And they asked the children to figure out how the pod works, and so that they could take so that they could play their own story on that part. So children enjoyed, so children enjoyed such timely interventions. During the study, children were also engaged in play without realizing that they were actually learning programming. For example, they often helped their friends fix their stories, like to find out where the problem was and make sense of the stories, without realizing that this whole process was basically like debugging a program. So since our methodology for evaluation was similar to that of the Project Torino UK study, by the end of 3 months, based on facilitators' observation notes and their conversation with the children, we could determine that children had learned all the CD concepts that were covered by CodeJumper. However, not in the computational thinking vocabulary, by which I mean that by the end of the study, children were aware that what a loop pod does and how they can use it in the programs that they had a lot of experience of using it, but they did not know that it is a concept of programming that is called loops or something that they already know now. So going to the last slide. So as Manohar mentioned in the beginning, this is just a first step in a long journey, and we are presently working on a few fronts, like introducing teachers now to the to Torino and enable them to play with children, because we were the facilitators, the researchers themselves were facilitators, and teachers were not yet part of the study. Second is to like do this transition of computational thinking vocabulary, and the last is like to address the foundational numeracy skills for children, because it's also the basic concept which you require for learning computational thinking. All of this while keeping play first, and all of this while keeping following ludic design for methodology. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to our talk. We can take the questions.
Excellent talk. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I see
Okay,
one.
Deepak has two questions. Yeah, sir.
So the first question was there are several efforts on tangible programming. One of the reasons obviously that we looked at this was we were very familiar with this, having been developed at MSR Cambridge. The idea was that this is an extremely rugged, well-designed product, spending about 2 years of time, and it is available for mass manufacture. The idea is we could have taken an alternate approach of trying to build an alternate tangible programming environment, but that will become a research project. We wanted to see what we could take and not modify the product, but the challenge is to modify to our environment. That itself is a huge challenge. We thought that is a challenge worth pursuing right away, instead of trying to look at alternate products or a new product. And the question about assessment, it's a tough question in general, because assessment of learning of any kind is very hard, especially computational thinking. Even in mainstream computational thinking, there are no clear instruments for measuring acquisition of computational thinking knowledge. So we essentially, again, didn't want to invent a new methodology for assessment. We simply followed the earlier work of the Cambridge lab in the assessment, keeping the teachers, the facilitators' knowledge about the interactions being central. So the facilitators, having spent every hour with the children, they kept notes, they engaged the children in conversation, and you can ask them saying, hey, what are you doing? They'll say, I'm doing it so that it can play 4 times. So you can understand that, oh, this child knows how to repeat a certain statement. So this is anything else, Gesu? If,
no, I'm good.
Okay, thanks, that's a good question.
I think somebody raised their hand.
Yeah, this is Jay.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just gonna ask. So, thanks for your talk. Could you talk a little bit more about? So there's this ludic design methodology. Can you talk a bit more about like what is the, I guess, trade-off or something between, you know, the students are learning to, you know, program essentially, and the kind of explicit knowledge that students should learn if they were in a computer science course. So like they know the concepts versus, you know, they can take, you know, tests that ask them, you know, do a loop, right? Like how would they do on a kind of an interview, given that they've learned in this way rather than a formal, in a formal environment? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we are in a very early stage, and especially these are children in grade 2 right now. So the idea is even to find out if we could use this platform to get to the basic result we obtained, that they were able to actually understand, enjoy, and demonstrate their understanding of these concepts. So transitioning to the computational thinking vocabulary and making them part of learning computational thinking as a formal study, that's in the future. We are at the very early stage.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Manohar, there is a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Would expand the functionality of the devices. Okay, so the question is expanding the functionality of the Torino. Right now, it is fairly general with the programming environment with multiple threads. It's limited by the number of pods to some extent, but the idea of this whole design was to transition the children in the original context of the UK schools through their curriculum, which is well structured, and transition the children who are blind or low vision into a text-based programming language. So that is the mandate or the broader goal of this particular product. We are yet to figure out how much more we have to push this. We haven't pushed the limits of this product, obviously. It's a very early exploration. So there's enough flexibility and complexity available for us to explore within the environment, because the programming is pretty flexible, and we don't expect to hit a ceiling with this product anytime soon. Did I answer the question, Anthony?
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. We have time for one last quick question.
I can ask a follow-up.
Oh, sure. Sure. Go ahead.
So I guess I was interested in what are ways, like you talked about loops and if statements and stuff like that. What are other things that you could teach with it that was not discussed? And are there any ways that you might want to change the devices to better situate them with this particular set of students?
See, other than the core constructs of statements, loops, and conditionals with pauses and programmable aspects of all of this, a major aspect of articulating what they are trying to do to somebody else, working as a team to build a program. These are all already fairly complex components of computational thinking and learning. We are again yet to reach there. So I'm not too worried about reaching the limits anytime soon, especially because we need to first of all, figure out whether this product itself is something that can be scaled, getting the teachers involved. The teachers now then have to introduce it to their school children. The curricular structure has to change in schools. Timetable has to be allocated. There are so many challenges ahead. This is like just a first dip into this huge ocean, right? But it's very encouraging for us, especially Gesu and others who actually spend a lot of time. There is a lot of initial skepticism about, hey, these kids are going to go all over the place. There is no particular lesson plan. Are you going to just end up chasing them all over the place? Chaos was there, but it soon kind of caught into some order, and we were kind of completely pleasantly shocked at the way that children were able to connect together, very proudly display, this is my story, and so on. So that's the encouraging part that we wanted to share as a publication right away, even though there are so many other things and open questions that has brought out from this work. Thank you, Anthony.
Okay. Thanks, Manohar and Gesu, for the wonderful talk.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot.